السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم ما بعد, and welcome to another video on the Islamic Knowledge YouTube channel. And before we go any further, as always, if I can request that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if I can also make another gentle request, and it is that you become an ambassador of Islamic knowledge by contributing as little as £5 a month. And you can see the link to become an ambassador of Islamic knowledge in the description of this video, and that really helps our videos to continue being fantastic, inshallah ta'ala. So in today's video, we're looking at this incredible book written by Omer Awass, and it's titled Fatwa and the Making and Renewal of Islamic Law from the Classical Period to the Present. And this book essentially is looking at how fatwa is the key building block of Islamic law, and how everything more or less starts with a fatwa when it comes to the Sharia law itself. And he's building quite a bit on a book, or the ideas rather, of another scholar, very famous scholar, Professor Talal Asad, when it comes to the issue of Islam being a discursive tradition. So this was kind of like a new word for me as well, in the sense that it wasn't a word I was aware of for the last, you could say, year or so, and it's something that I've kind of been really looking at, and it's been really interesting. And what it is that he's trying to show how fatwa is like the ultimate representation of this idea of a discursive tradition. And what does that mean? That means that the practitioners of a discursive tradition, i.e. the fuqaha, are constantly navigating the sources of Sharia, and they're constantly changing what they think should be the appropriate application of the rulings of Sharia. So Sharia isn't a rigid system. A discursive tradition more or less means that it's ever changing, it's ever evolving. If I were to really simplify that into like a, you could say, dummy level, that's what basically a discursive tradition is. And this is what this book is trying to show, that fatwa was the kind of vehicle or the main way in which Sharia law constantly changed and always was more applicable to the times that it was being applied in. So looking at the contents page, if you have a look at it, we've got the book starts off. We've got the introduction obviously right at the start, but let's just have a quick look at the contents page. You've got the introduction, questions regarding the authenticity of early Islamic legal material, outline and description of the key chapters, questions on method and approach in this study, situating this work within the literature on fatwa and Islamic law. Then chapter 1, fatwa in the prophetic and post-prophetic period. So he's just following the role of fatwa throughout the history of Islam. It's really interesting. Then you've got fatwa in the classical age. Here you've got a lovely discussion on the development of the madhahib as well, really interesting. Number 3, fatwa and the formation of Islamic legal discourses, institutions and society. Number 4, you've got the formation of the Islamic legal tradition and the formalization of ifta within the legal schools. Number 5, fatwa in the age of preponderance of legal schools. And then number 6, you've got colonialism, Islamic law and the post-colonial fatwa, and that kind of brings you, and you've got a solid amount of reading of about approximately 256 pages. So you can see it is a fantastic book. It's printed actually by Cambridge University Press, and this time it's actually a hardback book. So usually Cambridge, they print their books as paperback. This one's a hardback, so it's really nice. And this book is basically perfect for anyone looking to get a better grasp of the history of Islamic law. And it is a book that I did read, by the way, in order to write my forthcoming book, An Introduction to the Hanafi Method, Volume 1. And he starts off by discussing, as we've mentioned, fatwas in the age of the Prophet ﷺ, then the Sahaba, then the Madhahib, and then he has a section at the end of post-colonial fatwas. And also, as you can see, I have some notes on this book, and as I do have this for a number of books that I make videos on, and I hope to share my notes on this book on our Telegram channel. So head over to Telegram and type in @IKCourses. You can see on the center of the screen just there. Get onto that channel and you'll get a PDF of these notes. I've written them well in a way in which it's legible. You can read it and you can at least pick up all the key points in the book, and you can just go to those pages and benefit and get a summary of the full book, more or less. So right off the bat, I love something that the author does on page 22. So I'm just going to go to that page just now. On page 22, the author actually clarifies something here at the bottom, where he says, I've used an edition of a book that's actually from Shamila. I think that's really nice, and I think that's really, you could say, it's quite honest of the author to speak like this. And he says, see Abu Dawud, Sunan Dawud, Beirut, Maktaba al-Asriya, and then he says, cited from the Shamila Library Software version 3.61. I think the amount of people that will just use Maktaba al-Shamila and then they will just reference this book, giving the impression that I've gone back to the book, I don't think that's fully accurate. You should be quite honest to a reader and let them know that you've actually used a computer copy, or that you've basically not made that effort of going back to the original book. He then has a nice discussion, by the way, on page 44 of when the Ahlul Ra'i and Ahlul Hadith issue actually began. So if you have a look here, he says in the footnotes, Halaq is of the opinion that this rivalry between the two approaches of law began much later, in the middle of the 2nd century AH, and only showed showed the rudimentary beginnings of the rivalry in the beginning of the 2nd century AH. Yet one can say that even though the debate between these two schools had not taken shape around the issue of hadith in the late 1st or early 2nd Hijri, nevertheless, this is the very same period. In this very same period, there is a clear rivalry between those who advocated a rational, pragmatic approach, Ahlul Ra'i, and those who preferred to restrict their religious opinions to previously established norms and practices, or traditionalism, Ahlul Athar, later evolving into Ahlul Hadith, as will become evident in the forthcoming discussion. So he's kind of engaging when did this whole issue actually take place. Now here is something that I must add. The author has benefited tremendously from Halaq. In fact, if we go to page 266, right? So this is where he's kind of going through all the sources that he's used in the book, and he goes through all his references, his bibliography basically. Just have a look at how many times he's quoting Halaq, or how many books of Halaq he's used. So you've got there, it's almost about good decent amount anyway, about good 14 times. Halaq, 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 all the way Halaq. Even on this page, Halaq, 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 Halaq. Constantly he's benefiting from while Halaq's work. That's fine, but you just need to be wary of that. So you can see now Halaq's ideas are going to be heavily influential on the book. That's not to say that he quotes Halaq in an uncritical manner, but it's just to say that he does benefit a lot from Halaq. Now a really unique section of the book is where he has a detailed section on how Umar radiallahu anhu redefined the Islamic fiscal policy by keeping the Sawad lands in Iraq in the hands of the public, and he didn't make it into a ghanima, which technically may appear to contradict the prophetic ahadith, but actually it shows how Umar radiallahu anhu really is the founding father of this idea of looking deeper and deeper into the reasonings behind Sharia law. So he says on page 30, you've got this discussion. Remember, this is the fatwa in the prophetic and post-prophetic period. Remember, he's got all these chapters on how fatwa developed throughout the different generations. So here, a really interesting section here. Yet if Umar did not distribute the land to the conquering soldiers, then he would be violating the established practice of the Prophet, which was seen as normative by the Muslim community. Umar, acting on the advice of some of his advisors like Mu'adh ibn Jabal, chose to go against the previously established practice of distributing the land to the conquering soldiers, and sought the larger public's interest by leaving usufruct of the land in the hands of the original inhabitants, while extracting taxes for the state to be paid out to the troops as stipends. Another really unique feature of the book is the author's diagrams. He has so many diagrams. So on page 129, if you go to page 129, we've got a lovely diagram here on page 129 of how you could say the structure of ifta in the Hanafi madhab kind of works. So you've got case where Hanafi master jurists disagree, case where Abu Hanifa disagrees with his two associates, new case not found in established legal doctrine. Really interesting. Then on page 133, we've got Ibn Abidin's seven levels of tabaqat, or really it's coming from obviously Ibn Kamal, but you can see that he's presenting it as like you could almost like a diagram like this. Really nice, really interesting. He goes through all of them. Lots and lots of diagrams throughout the book. So even here as well, you can see how the Hanafis' later formulation of the relationship between istihsan and qiyas, early process of employing istihsan. So these diagrams really do help here. Qiyas is ra'i, you can be of istislah, istihsan. So it's really beneficial of this nature as well. Lovely diagrams in there. On page 78 to 79, the author discusses what may have caused the Ahlul Ra'i and Ahlul Hadith to come together. So this is the famous synthesization of the Ahlul Ra'i and Ahlul Hadith, and he discusses this on page 78. So he says, among the historical factors that contributed to the process of synthesis between the two approaches of legal jurisprudence are the following. First, then he goes through to the second, and then the third. So he's got three reasons. Quite interesting. Again, might not agree with all of them. Another unique aspect of the book is that the author critiques some of the arguments made by another author of a book that we've actually made a review on, and that's Guy Burraq in his book The Second Formation of Islamic Law, and I have made a video on that. You can see it as well on our YouTube channel. It's called The Second Formation of Islamic Law. So this author, Omer Awass, does critique him quite a bit, but that doesn't take away the fact that The Second Formation of Islamic Law is still a good book, I think, anyway. And on page 164, you can see he critiques Guy Burraq's whole assessment of what Ibn Kamal Basha was doing in his tabaqat. And also on page, if you carry on this whole section, he's critiquing Burraq quite a bit as well here in this section as well to some degree. Here as well, Burraq posits this relationship in reverse, where the legal opinions of jurists of the Ottoman learned hierarchy were shaped by the Sultanic edicts. He basically feels that Guy Burraq has made it look like the Ottoman Sultanic authority was playing too much of a role in how the Ottoman scholars were basically functioning. And he doesn't agree with Burak on that it's basically you're giving too much credit to the Ottoman Sultan there, or you could say the hierarchy, so to speak. And then on page 44, we've probably got one of the most important comments in regards to how the Ahlul Ra'i dealt with ahadith. So this is really, really important. And this footnote here, on this footnote number 21, he says, Hallaq asserts that Ahlul Ra'i were recognized in terms of their non-reliance on hadith. That's totally the wrong wording. But this wording is perhaps too strong, as we will find out that this camp did not necessarily shun hadith, as Hallaq's phrasing implies, but dealt with them differently than the Ahlul Hadith. So it was an issue of methodology, not an issue that the Ahlul Ra'i rejected a hadith or anything of that nature. So this is quite interesting. Obviously you can see he's again benefiting from Hallaq, but he is critiquing Hallaq as well. Then in the second part of the book, we have the author looking at different fatwas. So we have him looking at the fatwa of Rashid Rida on the riba, on interest in non-Muslim countries. Then we've got a fatwa by other scholars on blood transfusion, etc. And we have a look, he takes a look at what role secularism, modernization, you could say colonization played on some of these fatwas. So you've got here British colonization of Muslim-ruled India, all of them, again, modernization and colonization of Egypt, secular nationalism and Islamic reform in the 20th century Muslim world. Then again, institutional changes in Sharia, really, really interesting. And this is where he looks at Hallaq's fatwas in the age of colonialism. And he starts off with Rashid Rida's fatwa on riba fi dar al-harb, riba in non-Muslim countries. And then you got Ahmad Khalili's fatwa on blood transfusion. So really, really fantastic section here. He's even got a section, I think, even on fatwas that were given during the Mughal age. And some of them he looks at. He does look at Shah Abdul Aziz al-Dahlawi's fatwa as well on some issue as well. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was on whether the country is a non-Muslim country or it should be treated as a Muslim country. But in any case, there is a fatwa here. He's got a fatwa here. He even looks a bit at the Shi'i way of looking at things as well. So this is Al-Karakhi's fatwa. This is not Al-Karkhi. This is Al-Karakhi. This is apparently a Shi'i. I don't really know him too well. He discusses Abu Su'ud's role as well in making the Sharia more in line with Ottoman law or the Qanun. This is really interesting section as well. And so all in all, this is a fantastic, highly, highly recommended book. It was only published, by the way, in 2023. So it's a beneficial contribution that focuses on just the role of fatwas and muftis in the development of Islamic law. And I'll put the link to purchase the book in the description as well of this video. And I do hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you give it a like. I hope you share it with others. And I hope to see you on the next video. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.